The Queen's Jewish Link presents the Jewish Living Podcast, the show that examines the many facets of Orthodox Jewish life. Here's your host, Izzo Zwirin.
Each week on the Jewish Living Podcast, we have the opportunity to speak with experts in their fields. Every once in a while, we have the privilege of speaking to someone who is an expert in more than one field. This week is one of those weeks.
Shalom Aleichem, everyone. My name is Shlomo Katz, and I am privileged to be married and an Abba of 5 children here in Eretz Israel, in Efrat, where I have a Kehilat Shirat David. And for the past 20-something years, I've been traveling all over the world, singing my nigunim and learning with a bunch of amazing people that I get to meet along the way.
You might know Shlomo Katz as a musician, and you may even know him from that viral clip of a CNN appearance. But as you'll hear from our wide-ranging conversation, he is so much more than that. We'll discuss music, his community in Efrat, and the aptly named Shlomo Katz Project. Shlomo Katz, thank you so much for joining me. And I'll give you my first experience with you. This was back in 2004. When I was spending my year in Israel, and I went to the Battle of the Bands, and you were there. You were there as a guest. You weren't competing, because I feel like that would have been unfair at the time. But that was my first time that I had ever heard of you. I think Shalavim was doing one of your songs. They were doing Big Lavos, which they actually mixed in with Nigun Neshama. It was really nice. And I remember you being there, and I asked people around, like, who is this guy? And they told me, oh, Shlomo Katz, his brother Eitan Katz, and Nochi Kron. They're kind of like a trio. They do things together. But that was my first experience knowing you. I don't know if you remember that particular moment, but that was when I first got turned on to who you are, and several albums later of yours that I now own. It's a pleasure to have you on, and a privilege to have you on. And I thank you so much for joining me this week.
It's my honor. Bemet my honor.
All right. So the first thing that I want to dive into is kind of that it leads me into my story kind of leads me into this topic of the type of music that you are famous for. Now, the way I describe it has always been kind of a Herziger style. And I kind of put you and your brother obviously into that category, and you throw Nochi Kron in there as well. I was wondering if you could talk to us about how that is different than, let's say, a more pop, more heavily produced type of style. And why you decided to go that route instead of maybe something that might be maybe more lucrative.
That's a great ending to a question. That's a great ending to a question. Wow, that's amazing. You left that to the end. Look, I can only answer speak on my own behalf. Is that I never saw myself as a musician. It was never something I thought I was going to do. It was never something planned out. It still isn't something planned out. It's actually, I guess I'm still kind of like somewhat in denial about it, because I know, and this I probably will say, my brother is very shy after this as well, is that it's a bitui of avodas Hashem. It's an expression of being a conscious servant of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. That's the role the music does. Of course, sometimes it gets very cool, it gets very exciting, and it's very fun at times. But the general approach to it is one of using it as a vessel for something very, very gentle, very delicate, and very unique. So when that's the headspace of it, it's not like a war, like, oh my God, I should be doing more pop, but really we have no shaykhs to that world. Everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing, and Hashem gives everyone different talents, but it was never even a struggle because it was never there milechatchila. So it's, for me, in the musical world, especially my musical influences, were always highly spiritual musical influences that we're doing it for very high reasons. So I hope that answers a little bit.
It does. And on a similar note, it's very rare that a Shabbos goes by that I don't hear one of your songs. Whether I could walk into a shul and somebody's using Yismachu for Keladon or anything like that, Nigun Nevo for Shir Malos, like something's always being thrown in. I'm now, for me, that's just part of Shabbos. But my question for you is, what do you think when you walk into a shul or you hear somebody daven from the Amud that uses one of your songs or one of the songs that you had something to do with, and people who are there might not even know it's one of yours. They just know that it's a song that they hear a lot. So what does that mean to you when you hear these songs being played?
It touches me in ways I can't even express. I'm even getting choked up as I'm thinking about it, because of course it's happened over the years. The best is when someone comes and corrects you when you sing one of your nigunim and they tell you that you're singing it wrong. That's how you know you really made it. It's happened once or twice. It touches me in a place that it's hard for me to explain. Sometimes I go to a place of responsibility, like, wow, look, Ribono Shel sent the nigunim out. You have to take more achrayus and bring down more nigunim. But sometimes I just let it be. And just stand in absolute humility, wonderment, and amazement.
Yeah, I would also say that there are times when you hear that. The one that I really would imagine probably is the most touching, or of the most touching, is when you see like a group of chayalim ready to go out into battle, maybe coming back from a mission, and they're singing one of your songs. I've seen it with a group of chayalim, and they're just having a kumzitz or whatever, and they'll throw in like a Shlomo song or an A.B. Rottenberg song, and then there's one of your songs there, and there's all these songs that are kind of mixed in together, and it doesn't matter necessarily who composed them, but they kind of just touch that same type of chord in somebody.
Correct. At that point, it really, like, you're right, it doesn't even matter. It's part of something that's bigger than you.
Exactly.
That's, I guess, the best way to say it.
Once your song gets into one of those lists that everybody uses. It's absolutely amazing. Now, you use your music in ways not just to entertain, but you use it in a way to reach people, to touch them in a place that just maybe words or the written word might not do it. Can you explain what music does to us that maybe other forms of communication might not?
When it comes to nigunim without words, it's easier to understand it because the words are very limiting, as much as they're powerful because they allow you to express a specific desire. When you sing something without a nigun, without a word, or nigunim, it's the power of the Hasidic melody. It's the neshama itself that's expressing itself, and the neshama is an entity that's beyond words. So I think it gives people an outlet to finally let out so much that they themselves don't even understand about themselves. And I've seen that many times. The most amazing thing is that you could be in a room with thousands of people, everyone's singing the same nigun without words, and everyone's thinking about something else, but they're all singing the same notes. So that also shows you that it's really, obviously this is rooted in the Beis HaMikdash. I mean, when you came inside the Beis HaMikdash, into the Holy Temple, and you wanted to bring a korban, whether it's something you were obligated to do or an adava, something that you wanted to do, to bring a sacrifice, you were first met with the song of the Levim, this massive orchestra, because somehow the Levim were able to direct you to make sure that you understand yourself a little bit better. And I feel like that's hopefully the role that this world of nigunim is providing.
It's an amazing way to describe the role of a nigun without talking about the words that accompany it. I'm extremely interested in the concept of limiting yourself by the words. I've always wondered, when you're composing a song that you're trying to get to fit to specific words, do you pick the words first, or do you have the nigun and you try to find words that kind of fit? Because you don't want to kind of, when you take a song that, I daven for the Amud a lot. So when you take a song that's already been composed for other words and you try to push it into kedusha, into minkomcha or kelodon, they don't fit exactly correctly. But for some reason, and this is definitely intentional, the words, when you hear them on the song, they fit exactly right. So when you're composing a song that does have words, are you looking to capture a certain tone in the words that you chose to pick, or did you compose the nigun first and then try to find the words that will fit it the best?
That's so interesting what you're bringing up. What you're raising is so interesting, because I find myself going back and forth with that all the time. Most of my nigunim don't have words, actually.
Right, exactly. Yes.
And most of my nigunim don't have words. I've tried many times to put words on certain nigunim. Doesn't work. Once in a while, a pasuk will strike you so deeply, and then that leads it to a good nigun. But when you write a nigun, and then you're looking really hard to find words, unless you really have sat dishmaya, doesn't really fit right. Usually when there's a pasuk, that grabs your neshama, and then a nigun comes. That's when there's like a nice synergy between the two. I don't think anyone in the world has been able to do it better than Rav Shlomo was able to take so many psukim, so many expressions of David HaMelech from Tehillim, but even Yirmiyahu Hanavi and Eicha, take psukim like Al Eila Nivochia, or take Yeshayahu Hanavi and take Nevi'im, hear the pasuk so close in the heart, and then put it out into a nigun. So generally speaking, for me, it doesn't work like that so much. But there's no laws, there's no rules. When I get kacha, there's no rules.
All right. Well, since you mentioned Rav Shlomo, he's obviously very instrumental in influencing your style. I'd like you to talk about his influence, as well as if there's anybody else that we might not be able to obviously hear in how you go about composing.
I would say that there are three individuals that have the biggest hashpah on everything in my life, but specifically in music. First and foremost, it's my father, Rav Shlomo Katz, he's a real musician. He's a real musician, and
what's a real musician?
Meaning he's an emes musician. Like his musicianship and his art, how he plays, how he can play the piano and the accordion, and his voice and his compositions. My Abba is really in a league of his own, and that was very apparent. Our whole childhood, that was always in the home. And then definitely Rav Shlomo, without a doubt, he had the most hashpah on the type of music that then came out. But also in terms of taking the Torah and making it part of the music, Rav Moshe Weinberger, who from a young age for me continues to be a shining guiding light. In fact, as we're talking, I see I'm so excited because I have a 4-minute voice note from Rav Weinberger responding to something regarding our kehillah. So it's like with these three precious neshamas in my life, the power of inspiration is endless.
Phenomenal.
There are many others. I don't want to belittle any, but these are the main three that are shaykh to the question that you're asking.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to belittle anybody else. Yes, this is exactly right. That's what I was looking for. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that have influenced you in one way or the other.
Many. I would
sure.
say, I feel so bad right now. I actually starting to feel guilty, but you know what? I'm going to stop here.
We probably can go on the entire podcast telling you about who your musical influences are.
Yeah.
Usually musicians have that in their background, but I like the three primary ones are very good. Now you mentioned your community in Efrat. I want to talk to you a little bit about that. So you're the Rav of a shul in Efrat, and so can you talk to me a little bit about the type of shul, the type of community you're helping to? So I know that shuls are very different in Eretz Yisrael than they are in America, like the concept of the basic Knesset. So if you could tell my American listeners mostly, because I do have some in Israel, but most of them are in America, specifically about your kehillah, especially maybe those who are out there or maybe thinking about making Aliyah and looking for a specific community. If you could talk to me a little bit about that.
No problem. So in America, the Diaspora, Bichlal, the shul, is the central center for a person's Yiddishkeit. It's not just a place where he catches minyan. The community life is all wrapped around the involvement with the shul. And in Eretz Yisrael, it's definitely different. There are many reasons why it's like this. I think that the typical Israeli may not need shul for the expression of his Yiddishkeit. Hare, he was willing to be killed in all these wars. He knows his chibur to Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael is infinitely deeper than whatever any of us could imagine. But there's definitely a need for what we're trying, I believe, what we're trying to build here. And that is a community where, similar to the American approach, where life is surrounded by the energy you give and receive from shul, from the kehillah. So we're together kimat every day, and we learn together almost every day, and that's been one of the main points of, I feel, the opening of gates. We learn together all the time. The women learn together kimat every day. The men have shurim every single day. There's a lot of learning going on, all types of learning, and of course, a lot of the type of learning that what today is called Pnimiyus Torah. That's just the terminology people are using these days. But it's all the Torah that I myself have been, receiving the most hashpah from, and receiving the most life force from since I'm a teenager. And the davening is fire. The davening is absolute fire, and it's a different smell. It's not like we have to. Some shuls will define themselves by saying we don't talk in shul. The fact that you have to say that sometimes is a little bit shvach, because that should be a given, obviously. But by us, it's not that we don't talk. We're just really busy davening. You hear the difference?
Yes.
And it's a group of people, mainly people that have made aliyah, that want to grow. This is the most amazing group of chevra I could have ever imagined having the privilege of spending time with, of growing with. My children are growing with their children. And we're just, like I mentioned, we're just about to enter our new binyan, our new shul that has been built. And it's a very exciting time. And really, like, nothing would make me happier than letting word out to all those mevakshim, all those people that have a very beautiful world of Yiddishkeit out in Chutz La'aretz. And I'm not saying this sarcastically, I'm saying it with utmost respect, that there are many people that would come to Eretz Yisrael, but they don't want to compromise on what they feel is the spiritual platform which they have for themselves. So I pray, Be'ezrat Hashem, I daven, not enough, but all the time, that this place that we've been privileged to build provides that sipuk hanefesh that these type of people are looking for.
Phenomenal. Now that leads me right into the Shlomo Katz Project, which I want you to talk a little bit about. Now, most people listening to this podcast will know you for your music. Maybe some will know you because you have a community that you're building in Eretz Yisrael. Now, I'm assuming far fewer are going to know about the Shlomo Katz Project, which, until I spoke to people that work with you, I didn't know about it either. And I've been doing a lot of research on the Shlomo Katz Project, and I'm looking at it, and it looks phenomenal. I want you to be able to explain it in your own words, because there's just so much here that I would definitely not be able to do justice. So I'd like you to tell everybody what the Shlomo Katz Project is, and then we can move on from there, because I have many questions on it.
The best is to ask my wife, what's a Shlomo Katz Project? I'll tell you that much. She could tell you.
Well, I don't want a Shlomo Katz Project. I want the Shlomo Katz Project.
The only reason why we chose to use my name for anything is only because of reach, because to start from fresh and just come up with the name, which we may do anyway, but to start, it was just a matter of being able to reach as many people as possible. But like you said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu chose them, that a lot of the reach should be initially through the music, and Baruch Hashem. But I get to do a lot of very different, cool and special things, whether it's publishing, Sfarim, whether it's leading trips to the Ukraine, and now we're going to be, Be'ezrat Hashem, going to be doing all over Eretz Yisrael and other places in the world. We have a Poland trip in the works as well. Whether it's concerts of all sorts, and whether it's chabura gatherings, setting up workshops, setting up groups of people to get together and start learning text in a certain manner. There's so many different things under this umbrella that we figured it has to have a home. Pashut. There's so many different things going on. Whether it's the filming that we're doing, we have a lot of video, we have a lot of footage that we do for about 150 days straight. We put out a Hasidic story a day. We have a lot of writing, a lot of publications in different magazines. So there's so many different things under this umbrella. It needed a home, and it needed its own entity. And Baruch Hashem, we're going out on a trip. I'm not sure when this program is going to be aired, but we have a beautiful trip which is almost sold out already to the Ukraine, which we've done many times, to the Kivrei Tzadikim there, November 15th to the 18th, and much more in the works. And I get to work with a lot of very passionate people and creative people, which is making this whole this Gilgul this time around quite interesting.
So I want to get into some of the ways that you have this program organized. But before I do that, for somebody who has their hand in so many different areas, Rav of a shul, the music, and then this project, how do you kind of balance that? If somebody's looking for a shul that has a Rav that's always going to be there, if somebody's looking for a program that's going to have somebody at the helm that's always going to be available, and then you, on top of that, you have the music, and every once in a while you have to, put out new music, compose, and you want if you're doing a wedding or some sort of a simcha or some sort of a concert, how do you balance all of those things, and how does it affect each one of those areas?
Can you hear my anxiety while you're asking the question?
I could see your face. No, the listeners can't, but I could see your face, like kind of like a little nervous about how to answer this question, but I'm very curious.
I'll tell you, there's a few answers. One is I've narrowed down a lot of the things that I used to do that I don't do anymore. A chunk of my time, a huge chunk, was performing at weddings, and I don't do that now for about 3 years.
Oh, wow.
I officiate chuppahs quite often, Baruch Hashem. I really love doing that very much. I feel very honored doing that. I did feel that playing the wedding circuit, which was, it had its own specialness for probably 15 years at least. But that's okay if I don't do. And it's even better if I don't do it this time in life. So that was a huge thing that, another huge thing that changed was I used to travel outside of the country approximately once every 2 months for about 15 years. And now I travel for a Shabbos outside the country maybe 3 times a year. And that changed things, and that kept me much more here. I can give you a few other examples. However, the 2 other answers that I have for you is, one is delegation. The reason I work with the team is so that I try not to do anything other than give over the content of whatever I'm doing. But all the planning and logistics, all the normal stuff, like even banking, all these things, I don't deal with, Baruch Hashem, right now I don't deal with any of them. I have a very, very solid team. And obviously, monthly donations help us keep the flow of all this work going. But the last answer I have for you is that I'm still very much a work in progress. And I know, even as I'm talking to you right now, that I'm nowhere near where I feel like I will be and should be in terms of mastering the healthiest, most ideal approach. The awareness is much more there. There have been a lot of trimming downs, but I was probably the most ideal couch potato in my previous Gilgul. Because resting or like sitting on chairs for more than a few minutes in couch is not really part of the chavaya, of the experience of this world. I will tell you one thing that I don't know if it's part of your questions. It usually isn't in interviews like this. Maybe it will be, I don't know. But it's that, Kadosh Baruch Hu blessed my wife and I with 4 daughters and a baby boy this past year. And thank you. And whatever I say about how I'm learning about, mastering time, v'chulei, from the world, they're my greatest rebbes, they're my greatest teachers. And if I just remember to keep on listening to what's happening with us, that'll guide me more than any other book I learn, or even eitzes that I receive from Gedolim. I'll be okay.
I was going to mention that because it's not only the 3 things that I mentioned, and I'm sure you have your hands full with a bunch of other things, but obviously you mentioned at the beginning of the discussion that you have 5 children and obviously a wife that takes up a good. I only have 2 children. I know how much that takes up of my time, so I can only imagine someone with all of this responsibility plus a large family. Like, I'm sure that you don't want to give up any of those other things, but my guess is that if you had to, your family would be the last thing to give up. You're not gonna compromise any time with your family to do all these things.
I would. I did something cool this year, Erev Rosh Hashanah. I'm working really hard to stick to it. I don't have it in front of me right now, it's upstairs, but I bought a dumb phone.
Oh, phenomenal.
And what I'm trying to do is basically use the smartphone for an hour and a half in the morning for WhatsApp work. That's really what it is. Because I have a department of social media that does all those postings and everything. But the WhatsApp, the interactions, the shilas that come in every day also. And I have shilas to my Rebbeim and the posting that I have to, that I have the privilege of speaking with. So that's like an hour and a half in the morning, hour and a half at night. And if I could stick to that, I'm quite certain it'll even get sweeter and better and more conducive.
Amazing. Advice for everybody else out there: get a dumb phone.
Yeah, yeah.
I want to go back a little bit about the Shlomo Katz Project. On their website, you mentioned that there's four pillars that the project is built on. It's the Jewish people, the Torah, the land of Israel, and the community. And as I dug a little deeper into it, those don't seem to be mutually exclusive pillars. They kind of more intertwine and work with each other. So I don't know, maybe the fact that they're called pillars, meaning that if one crumbles, the other ones the other ones aren't as strong as they are in the beginning. So I'm interested in the way that you classified those things, and the notion of calling them pillars as opposed to
Hmm.
principles or things like that.
The truth is, it was a good advice from a wise person that I know to classify like that. I haven't given that too much thought, the Rashi of pillar versus principle, but if I do think about it now, as you're bringing it up, ha beha talia, they're all dependent on each other. So therefore, all the stuff that we mentioned before about all the different activities and everything, the home is our shul, the home is the kehila for everything. And Bemet, each of them, not only do they not contradict each other, they really are dependent on each other and they strengthen each other.
Mhm. That's great. That's phenomenal. The other thing that people might have heard about you recently, or at this point is no longer so recent, but last spring in Meron, there was the tragedy in around Lag BaOmer, and everybody here in America is kind of a viral WhatsApp video for us in America, watching you explain what happened and how to cope with the situation in Meron. And I think at that point, that was when at least for me personally, was like, oh wow, Shlomo Katz is not just a musician anymore. He's has a different insight into the world. So my question for you is maybe not to revisit that, because that might be difficult, but in general, coping with tragedy on that scale, or even individual personal tragedy, what are maybe some advice that you might give to somebody who has a heavy burden on them, that you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy, the things that they have to deal with, and how would you advise them to cope with such a tragedy?
You're touching on the deepest, the core of what life is really all about, right now with this question. I will go back and revisit that day to help try to answer this question, at the risk of maybe, it touching upon a certain chord, but that's okay. That's fine. One of the things that I think I'm very big on, and I try to stick with it, is that as much as, people always say, listen, in times of tragedy, never judge anyone, never say anything too much, just be there for people. That's true. But people want more, as I realize, people want more than just sitting with them in their place. Maybe that used to work a while ago. People actually do want more than just the comfort of, I'm just here to hold you. That's a beautiful thing. It's of course Shlav Aleph. But I think that when you're really with someone, you stick with them enough for them to be like, okay, what's the next Shlav? What's the next phase? And I think the next phase is to always, I never try to be Hashem's PR spokesman, ever. In fact, most of the time when people have their shilas, I find myself being able to authentically say, these are actually my shilas too. And then I try to form the question together with them. I guess at that point, that's when they actually do get a little bit of a sense of less loneliness. And it's not a trick or anything. It's just really what I feel. Generally, most of the time, every case obviously is different for everyone, kol echad, with each person with what they're going through. But I think that when I remember that, so because I'll tell you what it is with leadership, quite often there's this anxiety and stress of, oh my God, I gotta tell them the right thing. I gotta tell them the right thing. But even though you think you know what they're gonna say or what they're really saying, the Torah says, Shema Yisrael. Just listen to what a Yid is saying. Because if you pay attention to what they're saying beyond the words and you can hear their pain, you can actually be with them much more than just, being under the assumption that you know what they're going through and you know what they're talking about.
Wow.
So you got to become a real professional listener.
It's hard
There's
these
no
days.
simple task. It's
People-
very, very hard.
It's very hard. People have this concept of just waiting for their turn to talk instead of listening. And I catch myself doing it all the time, where even if I'm in a one-on-one conversation, even or much more in a group setting, but
Right.
you just wait for your turn to talk as opposed to just listening to what the other person has to say. And the concept of just listen to what the person is saying is very foreign.
Yeah, big time.
I want to bring the conversation a little bit back to some more fun topics. I appreciate you indulging me in that.
Sure.
Usually when I have any musician on, I ask three questions, and if you could indulge me in these three, I'd appreciate it. First question: do you prefer playing at a simcha or at a concert?
Concert.
Concert. What's the reasoning behind concert? Why do you like concerts better?
Because the simcha should be focused on the balei simcha, and unfortunately, it gets focused on the entertainment.
Okay, terrific answer. If you, I know you just, and for those out there who haven't been a chance to hear the new track with Miss in Black, I think very, very nice. For the future, if you were able to collaborate with another artist out there, who would you want to collaborate with?
Who do I want to collaborate with? You know what's so funny is that because our world is not that big, I think everyone's collaborated more or less with everyone. So it's like, if I had to think of someone to collaborate with, maybe, wow. Wow, you really caught me. I would say Evyatar Banai.
Evyatar Banai. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, Evyatar Banai.
We'll look out for that. So if anybody here would like to put them in touch, I mean, I'm sure you can get in touch with them without us. But
yeah, no, we are in touch. We have been in touch this year. We had a really interesting night together with Rav Judah Michelle and a few others.
Okay.
It was very special. Yeah, I think probably him. Yeah.
Phenomenal. Last question. Give me a lot of people know your music, right? And this question is not necessarily focused on your particular music, but if there's a song or an album out there that you don't think gets enough appreciation, that people should give a second look to, you think that would really help out people, or you think it's just a beautiful song or a beautiful album, what would that be?
Wow. You know, that's a great question, because I do get, you know, I'm sure a lot of musicians today, we get a lot of stuff sent our way, a lot of stuff. And once in a while, once in a while you'll get something that you're like, wow, I can't believe that the rest of the world hasn't heard this yet. Because I'm not so much in the scene like other musicians, I'm not sure exactly what's out there and what's not out there.
It could be an old one. It could be something from like when you were a kid also. Like if there's something that really touches you that doesn't have to be a current musician.
You know what? There was an album when we were younger that there was like a few tracks on there that really blew me away, and that was the band Safam. I don't even know if you've heard of them.
No, I have not.
They were really special. They had some really special stuff. That was definitely it. I think also the Rabbi's Son's music was I would say if you really want to sit and do some sincere tshuva, then go to like the Rabbi's Son's greatest hits and just let your heart open up to songs like Kinicham Hashem Tzion, Kaveh El Hashem, Haisali Dimasi. Those were like the old, those are very strong ones. That's right. That was the same era. Yeah.
Yeah. That's my favorite Rabbi's Son song.
Yeah.
But I'm sure people know that one. That's probably a little bit more popular than the ones you mentioned.
A few years ago, the answer would have been different, but Baruch Hashem, it changed. And that is the music of Michael Shapiro.
Okay.
The reason it changed is because we had the privilege of taking a lot of this person's works, Nigunim, and putting out a special album through the Shul Eish Kodesh. That's where songs like Only You, Everlasting Love,
right?
Those yeah.
All right. So that people...
you know what? There's one more. There's one
okay.
more. Sorry, one more person. The Nigunim of Rabbi Raz Hartman.
Okay, I don't know who that is either.
Raz Hartman. It's one of my closest friends, and he's a Rebbe. He's here in Yerushalayim. His nigunim, Raz Hartman.
All right. So for those of you out there who are looking for some maybe older or newer things that you haven't heard before or haven't heard in a while, you have your marching orders from Shlomo Katz. Can you give us a little bit of where people can find you, where people can find more about the Shlomo Katz Project, if you want to plug anything else also?
I want to invite everyone to come and daven with us. I want to invite everyone to come and join one of the WhatsApp groups where we basically share all the learning we do and all the other types of events which are ongoing, like you mentioned before. You could find out basically on all the social media outlets today. Drop a line, share your story, and hopefully, B'ezrat Hashem, before you know, we'll be davening and learning and dancing together.
And of course, we will link to all of those things on our various social medias. And also the website, if you want to plug that, I'll do that now for you. That's theshlomokatzproject.com if anybody wants to check that website out. The trip that you mentioned, you said it's almost closed out. Hopefully by the time this airs, people will have a chance to sign up. If not, there's other ones that'll be in the future.
Yeah.
All right. So
definitely
not sure when we're going to drop this episode. Hopefully you'll have it all sold out soon and you won't need our publicity. But if people out there happen to be interested, again, you can find out that information on the website, which of course we will link to. Shlomo Katz, thank you so much for joining me this week. I appreciate your time. I know that it's pretty valuable, as we discovered today, and I appreciate you taking the time. Thank you so much.
My honor.
My thanks to Rabbi Shlomo Katz for joining me this week. Let me tell you a quick behind-the-scenes story here. I've been in touch with Shlomo Katz's representatives for about 4 months now, trying to nail down a date to record this episode. We finally settled on a Sunday morning here in America while it was an afternoon in Eretz Yisrael, and of course technology, being the fickle entity it is, prevented the meeting from happening. Not only did Shlomo Katz reschedule for later that same day, despite his overwhelmingly busy schedule, as we just heard, he would not allow me to even apologize for inconveniencing him in the process. His exact words were, "That should be the worst thing you do in your lifetime." Rav Shlomo Katz is not only a man of many talents and expertise, but a kind and understanding mensch, and I feel privileged to have been able to spend some time with him. Until next week, Kol Tov.
The Jewish Living Podcast is produced by Sreli Paikus. Our theme song is The Band by A.B. Rottenberg. Follow us on Facebook at The Jewish Living Podcast and on Twitter and Instagram at Jewish_living. You can also email the show at jewishlivingpodcast@gmail.com. The Jewish Living Podcast is recorded in conjunction with the Queen's Jewish Link.